Hey everyone, I've just recently finished painting a study of a blue mushroom, and I painted this on an iPad Pro with an Apple Pencil. And usually I work in Adobe Photoshop with a Wacom tablet, with a Cintiq drawing screen tablet, and I'm trying to make the transition to getting a little bit more used to drawing and painting on the iPad with Procreate, which uses a lot of gesture controls and things that are a little bit non-standard to my usual workflow. So I thought I would put together a list of 8 things that I've learned in Procreate while painting this painting and share them with you. So number 1, resize the canvas so you don't get a blank area on the side where the sliders and controls tend to sit. So when you start a new canvas, there'll be a little slider section that kind of hangs over the right hand side, and as you can see in the painting so far, there's like a little area just on the right hand side where it's a little bit blank and where the lines don't really go right across, and that's because the opacity and the size sliders tend to sit over the top of the canvas when it's at its full size, and that's what you'll get when you very first open one up. So it's not too difficult to just pinch and drag resize the canvas a little bit, just to make sure that it's a tiny bit smaller and there's a little bit of room for your brush controls to sit on the right hand side. I obviously later on in the painting was able to go back and paint back over that section and blend that back in, and it was fine, but this is just something to keep in mind for other people who are also new to Procreate, that maybe if you're excited and you dive right in there, you might just forget to move that first. 2, make sure the color picker is set to the square button icon and not finger tap. So this was something that personally for me was just a non-negotiable. I've always worked with the color picker as a button, and having it as a finger tap is just way too broad. That's not going to be specific enough, and it's just way too fiddly, and you get more finger smudges on there than you need. So if you go into the gesture controls, I recommend that you set the color picker to the little square button icon, which is in the aforementioned little panel that gets in the way a little bit sometimes, so it's definitely easy to find. 3, brush taper won't work unless you turn off classic taper first. So tapering is when the ends of a brush stroke kind of become pointed and smaller, and that's often one of the big things for a beginning digital artist to try and sort of get down in the brush settings and get used to and make sure that they've got sometimes when necessary. And as I was looking through the brush settings there, I found that a lot of the taper settings don't do anything unless you turn off the classic taper checkbox first. So if you're trying to do that and you're having trouble, then give that a go. 4, the Squiggle Preview for a brush is actually not just an image of that preview of that brush, but you can actually clear that squiggle away and draw your own squiggles right next to the brush to test it out yourself. And not only that, but these squiggles that you've drawn in the little test pad area in the brush settings section, they actually update to reflect the changes to the settings of the brush that you've made, which is just mind-blowing and probably the most exciting thing I've discovered in Procreate so far. I thought it was an amazing feature, and I used it a little bit, especially when trying to figure out the tapering. 5, don't be afraid to zoom in for more detailed work. So this is not so much a technical thing as just a process thing and getting used to that little pinch zoom thing. And I think probably because I'm afraid that I can't get the canvas back to something that's properly rotated, I don't tend to pull in and out as much as I should. So make sure that you work at making sure that you've gone in and worked on those little finer areas. And obviously this video won't show you where I've zoomed in because of the way that it records the time lapse, but I have zoomed in and out quite a bit, and so it's important to make sure you do that. 6, use a glove or a tissue just to rest your hand on the glass if that makes you more comfortable. It wasn't very comfortable for me because I'm not used to a glass surface, and I don't like getting my fingerprints and the oiliness all over the screen. So just putting a tissue or getting one of those little drawing gloves is really handy for that. 7, have your reference photo flat rather than upright. So this is just a personal preference, but because I'm drawing with the iPad flat on the table instead of folded up into a little canvas shape or propped up against anything, I find that it's easier for me when working from a reference to get that translation across if I put them both flat on the same surface. So in this case, I've used my phone, or you can print one out, or however you do that. 8, learn to use the edge of the Apple Pencil more. So I think especially because my Wacom stylus doesn't really pick up an edge, it only has a point. I have to get a little bit more used to remembering that I can and should use the edge of that pencil, especially because Procreate brushes have a lot more texture to them and a lot more to be gained from using the edge of the Apple Pencil than a Photoshop brush typically would, in my experience. And so in particular in this video, you'll see in that top back right corner where it's faded out and there's like a large area of texture to cover. Rather than trying to draw all of that in piece by piece, it was much more efficient to just use the edge of the Apple Pencil. And honestly, that was one of the things that really kind of sealed the deal for me to even move into the Apple Pencil in the first place, was being really impressed by how, even though the tip is not as fine as a Wacom tip, it has this fantastic ability to change the texture and the application of the brush depending on the angle at which you hold it, which is just amazing. So those are my really quick tips, and it's maybe not the easiest to follow along with all of those because the time-lapse recording that Procreate gives you doesn't show any of the menus or anything like that, but I just thought these would be some really quick little tips for if you've played around in there just a little bit and maybe there were just some things that you hadn't thought about or you're a little bit stuck on, and maybe some of this can help you as well without me having to go into like a full-blown tutorial to cover all of those things. So thank you all for watching this, and I'll see you in another video soon, hopefully.